All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Siskiyou News Views. I'm your host, Cindy Summers, and we're in our mobile studio here at the Siskiyou Domestic Violence and Crisis Center in Yreka. And we're talking with Carla Yreka.
Irish.
Deputy Director, and also Jim Roseman, Executive Director. How are you guys today?
Good, thank you.
Now we're here talking about, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we know that, breast cancer awareness gets a lot of visibility, but I really feel like domestic violence awareness during October is a little underserved. So we're here today to talk with these wonderful people who serve this organization for our community about that annual event and also the things that they do here in Siskiyou County. So let's first talk about what's happening just locally for the Siskiyou Domestic Violence Month here.
So we're going to have an open house on October 25th from 11 to 2. I believe that's a Wednesday. And we're inviting the community to come out, come see our office, meet our staff, get to know our services.
Okay.
And we are going to be doing a remote broadcast with the country radio station.
Okay.
So Kevin Sponsler is going to come out and do live interviews from our place. So
Okay.
if you want to be on the radio, come on down.
Yeah. And that's going to be here in Yreka, the address at the center here?
It's 118 Ranch Lane in Yreka, California. We're
Okay.
on the corner of Ranch and South Oregon.
Okay. So at the open house, what could they find? They could find about services or what?
The most important
Yeah, what's the
thing,
goal?
No, the most important thing is we're going to have great food.
Okay.
So that's how we get you to come in.
Okay.
Our open houses are well known
Uh-huh.
for fantastic food.
Okay.
So we should have that.
Okay.
We might even have a banana split station.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Yes.
fun.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then while we have you in there, you can learn about our services and meet our staff, tour our facilities, and kind of get to know us and realize that we're not scary, man-hating people.
No, and some people, there might be a little stigma about that, but domestic violence isn't necessarily a gender issue,
Right.
and these are some of the things that you can learn here from some of the professionals at the Siskiyou Domestic Violence and Crisis Center.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come, they can talk to people about the different things that you're doing as far as services in the community. And then also just on a day-to-day basis, we want people to know too that the services are available, that the center though isn't the location to come for services and stuff. There's some different ways that you offer services to individuals who are in need, right?
Well, our business office is a walk-in, so anybody can come in. We're open from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
But we also have a hotline for after hours, so that's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week free hotline.
Okay.
So if you need, you're in a crisis situation and you want some information and maybe it's even the middle of the night, you can call our hotline and get an advocate on the phone to give you some options and some ideas of how you can get out of a violent relationship safely.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the services, because I met some of the staff members that you have here on staff, right? Jim, maybe you can take this. So some of the different people that you have working with your staff provide different levels of service to people in the community. So what are some of the different professionals that you have here that specialize?
Well, each position has a specialty of some sort, but everyone is trained to do all the services. So like we have a court advocate, for example, and she will accompany people to court, because it's a scary situation to go to court if you're not used to it.
Uh-huh.
And so they're just there, they're non-judgmental, but they're there for that person. But that person also does other things like restraining orders, counseling, helping to clean we can't afford to have janitorial service, we have to clean our own place. They do a lot of different things, but that's that person's primary responsibility and expertise. We have a sexual assault specialist.
Okay.
We have a sexual assault educator now at COS. This is from a special, actually it was only funded for 2 years, so right now we're absorbing the cost of that person while we're trying to get this program up and running at COS. We have an educator. I think I may have mentioned to you just outside of this interview, 309 classes in Siskiyou County last year.
Wow, wow, that's incredible.
So, a person could do the math.
Uh-huh.
If you had 30 kids in every one of those classes, that's a lot of exposure.
Yeah,
It's anti-bullying, promoting nonviolent solutions to problems and the like.
well, that's interesting. I think it's wonderful that you would be attacking the problem of bullying. I don't know, me being a little naive about the organization and maybe about the history of the organization, it probably wasn't such a primary or a visible issue maybe in the past, but now it's something that you're targeting in our communities?
Well, we've had the prevention education for a long time. When I first started working for this organization in 2004, I came in as a violence prevention educator.
Oh, okay.
And what that position does is that it goes to any school in the county, any classroom in the county that asks for our services. It's free. We have curriculum that's like age appropriate, all the way from even preschool, kindergarten,
Wow.
all the way to high school.
Uh-huh.
And we have curriculum that's like for each level. So there'll be some curriculum for the younger classes, like kindergarten and first grade. We have a class that's called Hands Are Not for Hitting.
Right, okay.
Right? And then in a little bit older elementary school grades, we'll have some other classes, which includes the bullying curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we kind of see it as a predecessor to
But adult violence.
to adult violence. So we want to try and teach kids early different skills to use when they're dealing with conflict rather than using violence.
Do you also teach them how to identify that in their own homes? Or are you dealing more with
a little bit?
them?
We're mainly dealing with them.
Okay.
Because what's going to happen. So Jimmy knows that their parents are fighting.
Uh-huh.
It's not necessarily going to change anything. We want to get that message out to the adults more.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
But when we get to the older classes, like high school, we start to get into some of the more serious topics. So we have a healthy, unhealthy relationship.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we have a whole program on teen dating violence because that's the time when people start dating.
Uh-huh.
And that's when you kind of want to know what are some of the signs of what an unhealthy relationship looks like.
Uh-huh.
We have a date rape class, we have a sexual harassment class, so kind of more heavier topics.
Yeah.
But I think high school kids can handle that.
Uh-huh.
We try and start off with some of the lighter topics like self-esteem and we have an anger bingo. Yeah, something kind of fun. So that by the time you get to the more serious classes, you have a rapport with the students.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Now, so the idea, the object there is to catch this before it gets into later adulthood.
Exactly.
As far as adults, how's education happening in the community for them? Are they doing any classes or what's happening locally for?
We have a support group
Okay.
that meets every other week,
Uh-huh.
and that's open to anybody that wants to come, mainly people who are survivors of domestic violence, and they can come and, there'll be a different topic every week.
Mhm.
When people are staying at the shelter, we have support groups also. A lot of the community awareness, like Jim or I will go and speak to the Rotary or to Kiwanis, whoever asks us really, and do community education.
Mm.
Sometimes we have trainings that are specific on domestic violence to the community. We also have a 40-hour advocate training for volunteers
Oh.
and staff.
Uh-huh. So you are looking for volunteers?
Yes, but it's hard to get volunteers because they have to take our 40-hour training
Uh-huh.
before they can even have like any kind of client contact.
Right.
That's through the penal code.
Uh-huh.
And to add to that, and this isn't our agency that does it, but Con is very active in teaching parenting classes, sometimes in Spanish.
Uh-huh.
Classes in Spanish for those that don't speak English. And it's not specifically our program, but it works well with our program.
Uh-huh.
I mean, obviously parenting is a huge issue when it comes to the whole idea of, how do you raise them, this little kid, and teach them right from wrong? How do you just discipline. Spanking is not what, when I grew up, spanking was a pretty common way of letting, your parents letting you know they were unhappy with you. And they've discovered through research actually that there are better ways that eliminate the actual violence. So Carla's really involved in that, as well as other facilitators. But
That's interesting. I mean, I'm glad that it comes from a scientific study to be able to share that.
Oh,
You know.
people still are very attached though. my father's father, and I came out fine. It's like, we don't even argue about it in my classes, because I just tell them straight out, I'm not gonna, support that stance.
Right.
You can, if you want to do that, that's fine, but that's not a tool that you're gonna learn at this evidence-based parenting class.
Okay. So what about people who have friends and family members who are in a domestic violence situation? How can we help them?
So it's really hard. Okay, first of all, the statistics show that it takes approximately 7 times leaving and going back and leaving and going back, and that's really frustrating for loved ones to understand.
Okay.
And most people that don't know about how domestic violence work, they think, just leave. Why don't you just leave? Why do you stay? But there's a lot of things that happen that keep that person in that violent relationship. I mean, first of all, the violence doesn't start immediately. If a relationship started out with violence, nobody would be in a domestic violence relationship. That's not what happens.
Right.
What happens is you meet this person, they're so charming, they're amazing, Prince Charming or Princess Charming. Never met someone like that, right? So I call that, that's the bait.
Right.
Once they reel you in, then slowly, very slowly, different things start to happen. So by the time the physical abuse happens, if it escalates to that, sometimes it can just be verbal and emotional, which is just as damaging.
Okay.
But you're 3/4 of the way down what we call the violence continuum.
Okay.
And the end of the violence continuum is homicide or suicide. Right?
Right.
So you're 3/4 of the way. You're pretty close to that end of the line, worst case scenario. That's when the physical violence happens. But initially, it's a lot of isolation, jealousy, where you're going, what are you doing? And in the beginning, that's very flattering.
Right.
You think, oh my gosh, this person just loves me so much.
That they care
That they
instead
care
of
that
understanding
much.
it's a control.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Domestic violence is a power and control issue. It's not an anger management issue.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I've
So
never heard it expressed that way.
It's about, having power and control over that victim.
Okay.
So another thing that happens is isolation. Pretty soon, the victim isn't talking to their friends, especially
Going
guy
out,
friends or the other gender friends, or family members, or they move to Siskiyou County where it's very isolated and they're away from all their support groups. So when the violence happens, there's nobody there to help them get out of it, oftentimes. I mean, there's places in our county where the bus comes once a week or doesn't come at all.
Right.
So it's a pretty good place to have domestic violence happen in terms of the isolation, right? Anyway.
And a lot of times along those lines, family and friends don't believe the victim.
Right.
They know Joe from work, and he's such a jolly, nice, easygoing person. So different person at home.
Right.
So just disbelief. Well, when your family and friends don't believe you, you tend to withdraw even more.
And there's a lot of brainwashing that happens. That's kind of what I call it. A lot of put downs and verbal abuse and making you think that you're a terrible person, nobody's going to want you. So again, by the time the physical abuse happens, you really believe that. And so it's really hard to leave and get out of it. It's the Stockholm syndrome or the battered women syndrome is what we call it.
Okay, and explain that to those who don't really.
Oh my goodness.
Basically, the Stockholm syndrome is used in law enforcement experiences in hostage negotiations.
Okay.
Like you would never tell a hostage what you're about to do, because when they get off the phone, they'll turn around to the hostage taker and say they're gonna come in the south door.
Right.
And they've even had hostages that ended up marrying the person that took them hostage. It's a psychological thing. Under great stress, you start to identify the person that's involved with that stress.
Oh, creating the violence against you in some way.
Well, just creating a bond.
Oh, but I mean, that they're creating a bond to some person that's creating violence towards them in some way, is what you're saying.
Right.
Okay.
And the same thing happens with, and the terminology is different, but like Carla said, and most of the time it is women.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gender-based, but the fact of the matter is,
Right.
most of the time,
Right.
it's like 80% of the time, maybe
Right.
even higher in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
I came from Monterey County where it was 20% females were arrested for battery.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
a different location,
Right.
different environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted, before I forget, I wanted to just touch on three other reasons why they stay. They threaten to kill the dog. They threaten to kill the kids.
Oh.
They cut off your finance. And there are solid reasons why people just don't pick up and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And if, what I think a big problem is, and I don't know if Carla shares this view or not, but I started with domestic violence back in the late 60s.
Uh-huh.
So I'm an old person. As much effort is made to educate people, it's still an enormous problem.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe even worse than the late 60s. I mean, I don't have any numbers to throw at you.
Right.
And so my take has always been, because I spent over 30 years in law enforcement, is to educate the youth. Like, I'm not convinced we can turn too many adults around in their behavior.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's a personal view, not the agencies. But that's why I like the parenting classes. I like having an educator out into the schools teaching kids, because if you can get that information out there and absorb, then they can carry that forward. And again, I don't want to sound like negative Charlie, but when they get up into their early 20s and older, they're pretty set in their ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do change,
Mm-hmm.
but as far as the issue of domestic violence, I think the key is going to be an education in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
So domestic violence is a learned behavior. You know, most people learn it because they grew up in a domestic violence home. The chances of becoming an abuser when you grow up in a domestic violence home is much higher than if you grew up in a home that is violence-free.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a learned behavior, it can be unlearned,
Mm-hmm.
but it's very hard to unlearn it. You know, first of all, you have to kind of admit you even have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that makes it hard is that the person that's hurting you or doing the crime is someone that lives with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's someone that you love,
Mhm.
and it's somebody that maybe you have children with.
Mhm.
So that makes it a very different situation than, for example, I'm walking down the street and I get mugged. Or I
Right.
get robbed.
Right.
I don't have to go home
Mhm.
with the person that just mugged me,
Mhm.
but in domestic violence you do, you know. And a lot of times people continue to batter because it kind of works, you know. It's like it keeps that person under their thumb, it keeps them under power and control, so you know, they can unlearn it, but it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are here to do is to help that victim get out of that situation and become a survivor.
Okay. And so, like you said, it's not just physical, right?
Yes.
So it's emotional, it's mental. So let's talk about some of the other ways that people can understand that they are a victim, or that somebody that they know is a victim. Because a word that kept coming up when I was looking up things on the internet is narcissism. Okay? And can you kind of talk about that a bit?
Okay, so we're not therapists and we are not psychiatrists.
Right.
So I'm really wary about labeling somebody that,
Mhm.
but I have to tell you, I did a presentation on domestic violence and, you know, kind of what we've been talking about with a psychiatrist of behavioral health.
Okay.
And he immediately told me, oh, that sounds like a narcissistic personality or a psychopath.
Get on something.
Yeah, but we don't call it that, you know.
right.
But I think there is definitely something to that,
Mhm.
you know.
Okay.
And we deal more with the victim side of it than
Mhm.
the perpetrator side. We
Mhm.
don't do the batters intervention program. We tend to help victims with the individual counseling so that they kind of try and understand what's happening to them and where it's coming from, and that they're not alone. I
Mhm.
think that's part of the problem. They feel like maybe they're the only ones that it's happening to, where the reality is that it's almost like textbook. There's tactics that batterers use that are very, like, you know, they'll use one.
Step by step, it's very
classic,
similar. Yeah, okay.
You know,
Okay.
and once you understand the cycle, that it's a cycle, it's a pattern of abuse, and you understand the cycle, you kind of realize, oh, there's like names to this, there's words to this. This is happening to me, and it's been happening to other people.
Now, your support services are free of charge, I'm
Yes.
assuming? But the things, like if somebody has to go down and file legal things, that's all a whole separate issue, is that correct? How does that-
We help with restraining orders.
Okay, okay.
So we do legal advocacy.
Mhm.
Now, our restraining orders are civil restraining orders, so they're filed in family law. They're not a criminal matter.
Okay.
And the courts have their own definition of what it's required to get a restraining order.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
oftentimes, and people don't necessarily understand this, and it's not something that we decide, it's something the court decides.
Mhm.
You have to be in danger for your safety, you know, in order to meet that threshold of what the court sees as requiring a restraining order,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
So in lots of cases, not lots of cases, but in some cases, there may not be enough to warrant a restraining order.
Now, when they
It's
come,
really not a prevention, it's an intervention.
okay, and when they come here, you can guide them, like,
Yes.
they talk to you.
We fill out
How
the
does this
restraining
happen? Like, if somebody, I'm a person, and I believe I need help because this is happening in my personal space. Do I come here? What happens? And what happens?
So you come into the office and you talk to somebody, and then we meet with you and we kind of figure out, does it meet the criteria to get a restraining order? So are you an intimate partner
Mhm.
or a close family member? There has to be a,
Oh,
you know,
okay.
a certain degree of relationship.
Mhm.
So if it's your neighbor, we can't do a restraining order against you, not a domestic violence one.
Right, right, right.
Okay. So, and then is there enough allegations? And then we sit with that person and we fill out the paperwork for them.
Wow,
It
okay.
takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending if custody is involved. And under that restraining order, you can get a move-out order, which means you can ask that person to move out of the house.
Uh-huh.
And you can ask for custody, you know, at least temporary.
And at these court, there's also an advocate that'll go to court dates and stuff with individuals as well?
For the domestic violence restraining order hearing, we have a court advocate that accompanies them. So not on criminal matters. We
Oh.
can accompany on criminal matters, but they have to ask us. And that's not something that we do on a regular basis.
Uh-huh,
You know,
uh-huh.
that tends to fall more under like victim services jurisdiction. But if it's a domestic violence issue,
Uh-huh.
we can accompany.
Okay.
It also doesn't cost the victim money to file that if it's
Yes.
a domestic violence case.
Oh, okay.
Where like a civil one is what, $435?
Yes, it's almost $400.
No worries. Okay, that's okay. That's what I was curious about. Okay.
Right, so they've eliminated the cost involved in hoping to help a victim and so forth. And something was said earlier I wanted to throw out there, and so I'm going to step back a little if I can. You know, it wasn't until the mid-'80s that law enforcement really even considered it a crime.
Yeah, it was a family issue.
Family affair. 1986, the law was changed in California, and it made a sea change.
Mhm.
I mean, the law enforcement could take the batter out of the house even if they didn't see the actual
Well,
felony committed.
okay.
Just a complaint of pain, for example.
Uh-huh.
Well, when I first got involved in law enforcement, you pretty much, the victim's jaw had to be floating back and forth after the abuser broke it
Right.
before you could arrest him on a felony.
Wow.
And it doesn't mean that the district attorney's office files a felony
Mhm.
if the injuries are minor. But it sets some accountability. Little Johnny sees daddy being carted off in the cop car, so he's not going to, hey, the Atkins at fault here,
Right.
type of stuff.
Right.
So it was very helpful. But I think the bigger issue is that most of the public and people don't want to accept the fact that there is so much domestic violence that goes on. Where even in support, and bless these people, if you're suffering from cancer, heart disease, child abuse, everyone's willing to get behind that.
Mhm.
We need to stop this. But my take on it is, after the late 60s till now, is that the general public, I don't think, still accepts the fact that it's a crime and society should be getting involved to help these people. Again, personal take.
They think that it's something that happens to those people,
Uh-huh.
Those people over there that are poor and not part of my social circle, that's who domestic violence happens to. And domestic violence is really something that cuts across gender, ethnicity, race, socioeconomic, and education.
Mhm.
I've had people that call me, victims that call me, and they're like, I have a college degree. Well, it doesn't make you immune from
yeah.
domestic violence,
Yeah.
or I'm middle class or I'm well off, it happens. And everybody's always shocked in some cases when it comes out. Oh, wow.
Do you have numbers on who the number of people that you served? Can we qualify it in a percentage? Maybe 1% of Siskiyou County is.
Well, Siskiyou County has some of the highest rates of domestic
Okay,
violence
so let's talk
in the
about
whole
that.
state.
Okay.
When I talk to the DA's office, Victim Services,
Uh-huh.
they say it's one of the highest, if not the highest, crime that happens here.
Okay. Okay.
So it's pretty.
It's prevalent as far
prevalent.
as. Okay.
It's prevalent everywhere, but we tend to have some high incidences for sure.
Mhm.
And
And are there some contributing factors like alcohol and stuff that seem to be common issues or?
So alcohol and drugs don't cause domestic violence.
Right.
A lot of people think it causes, but it's not. It can be what we call co-occurring.
Uh-huh.
So it can happen at the same time, and if it's present, the risk of lethality is much higher.
Okay.
So if you have substance abuse or alcohol abuse, the risk
Seems
of
to heighten
someone,
the level of violence.
yes,
Okay.
the risk of someone getting seriously injured goes up.
Okay.
It doesn't cause it though.
Right.
Same thing with unemployment. Does not cause domestic violence. There's lots of people that are unemployed that are not batters.
Right.
Again, domestic violence is a learned behavior and it's a power and control issue,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right. So do you have some numbers there for Siskiyou County?
Not for Siskiyou County. I have some for, you probably have some
National.
normal.
National.
These are some national
Okay,
statistics.
that'll give us an idea.
So every minute, 20 people are victims of intimate partner violence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so every minute. A woman is beaten every 9 seconds in the U.S., right? Intimate partner violence is the leading cause of female homicide and injury-related deaths during pregnancy. So actually during pregnancy, violence tends to escalate for some reason, which is really,
Wow.
yeah, it's scary because, the studies have shown that the fetus is affected by violence, and children that are exposed to domestic violence, especially from 0 to 3 and 0 to 5, have it's an impact to their developing brain.
I would, yeah.
Mhm.
Because you've got adrenaline rushing in the system and all kinds of
Yes,
stuff.
and the brain is getting developed.
Uh-huh.
The brain is one of those organs that is undeveloped at birth, and if it's exposed to domestic violence, even if it's not, directed at that child or that baby, it really impacts the development of the brain.
Mhm.
And then the last one is domestic violence is the third leading cause of homelessness among families. So
Oh,
a
wow.
lot of people that are homeless is a result of domestic violence, whether
So-
it's current or past.
And that was going to be my next question. Let's talk about the shelter, right?
Yes.
Because
Well, then Jim might have some of our specific numbers, do you?
Well, not necessarily with that, just that topic. But I have numbers. I don't know if you would be interested to know how many presentations we've given to the community, how many school classes we've given. The thing, getting back a little bit to the numbers thing, is domestic violence occurs, like Carla said, in all levels, social, economic. But we don't typically get people that have means, because they call their lawyer.
Oh, okay.
They handle it.
Okay.
Where it's usually the middle and lower social economic group that use the police. The
Right.
wealthy seldom call the cops.
Yeah.
But the cops are the first line of defense. In fact, I used to have a police chief that said we're social workers with guns.
Oh, okay.
That's true.
Yeah.
So that's the first level. So we tend to deal more with those folks that are, they're seeking help. They don't have a lawyer they can just call up and get half the, the net worth
Right.
of the abuser or whatever. And so that's why I'm always just really careful with numbers. I don't think anyone that looks at things objectively wouldn't come to the realization that it's a huge, huge problem.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that, but sometimes it's interesting statistically to say, like, oh, we had 14,000 domestic violence calls in Siskiyou County last year. It's not necessarily that relative, but it kind of puts a number on at least what's being reported, but it's such a hidden crime, right?
Yeah.
Such a hidden crime.
Not everybody, there's more happening than people come to our office.
Right.
A lot of the domestic violence homicides that have happened in this county, a lot of those victims,
You never saw them.
We never saw them. There's a few that we did see, but a lot of them they never came for services.
So if you were speaking of homelessness, and that's what the shelter's supposed to help prevent, correct?
Well, the shelter is primarily a shelter for domestic violence and sexual assault victims.
Right.
So it's a confidential location. It's not a homeless shelter. It's a domestic violence shelter.
Right. But you were saying
yes,
that you're trying to minimize that problem.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So when you leave, people say just leave. Well, it's actually the most dangerous time. 6 months after you leave is the most dangerous time in a domestic violence relationship.
Okay.
And that's what the shelter's supposed to do. Kind of help minimize that danger. Also, where is the victim going to go? It's the perpetrator is someone you're living with.
Right.
And then if you filed a restraining order, what do? You wait around while that restraining order is getting signed. Sometimes you want to go to a safe location while that restraining order is getting signed and getting served and getting implemented, right?
And it's for children as well?
Yes.
Okay.
So our shelter is available actually for male victims too. So we serve any victim of domestic violence and their family.
Okay.
So we'll get children. Primarily we get women, but we've had a few men.
And it's free.
Yes.
The food's provided, so you don't have to worry about where your meal's going to come from. You have a nice, clean environment for your kids. That we have games, books. It's a wonderful place. If you have to be there, it's too bad that we have to have a place like that. But it is a very nice environment while you're
Working through it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to pay rent, or utilities or anything like that, so you can save some money to try and move out, get your own place, establish yourself.
And there's counseling that happens there.
There's 24/7 staff.
Okay.
We have staff that are there 24 hours, with some exceptions. But most of the time there is somebody there. So you wake up in the middle of the night, you're having a nightmare. You can come downstairs and talk to somebody.
But you also are there to help strategize getting them back into...
Yes. So if we have space, our shelter is a little bit unique than most other shelters in other parts of California are completely always full. We tend to be able to have the luxury that if we have the space, we can take somebody that's homeless. So we can take women and children that are homeless. We only take domestic violence male victims, but if we have the space, we can take women and children that are homeless. It's not our priority, and if we need the room, they might be asked to leave. But we've helped a lot of people get back on their feet.
It's, and transitional, like,
It's only a temporary
okay,
space.
okay, because some people, when being involved in these types of situations, need some coaching and assistance in getting back into their life. And is that what you help provide as well when they're there at the shelter?
Yes. So let me share a story with you of a recent client.
Okay.
Hopefully, I'm not going to give any information because it's, in a small county, you have to be really careful that you don't share too much. But we had a mother and her son that came in, domestic violence situation, but also substance abuse. That often goes hand in hand too. It can be a coping mechanism for dealing with the violence, and then it becomes a problem too, right? So she had substance abuse and domestic violence issues. Sometimes we even get mental health issues thrown in. So, it's like 3 things all in one.
Right.
Anyway, she was pretty newly sober when she came in. I don't even think she had 30 days under her belt. But she came in, and once she was away from that chaotic situation and the violence, she was able to really relax, calm down, and really start taking care of her issues. So she started going to 12-step meetings, doing this. Anyway, she moved out, she got her own place, is working on getting employed. Her child has some special needs, he really got some support. She took one of my parenting classes on the side.
Oh, nice.
She was a little nervous about leaving the shelter. She said, you guys are my family, and you're my support, and you really helped me with my sobriety, and I'm a little scared of going back out there and kind of being on my own. But they can always, and that's what we told her, you can come back, you can call us anytime, you can come into the office. So just because you left the shelter doesn't mean you're on your own.
Right.
We're still there to support you.
Right.
But she's kind of a good news story.
Yeah, success story.
Yeah, success
Beautiful
story.
success story.
People have to be suitable for the shelter. They have to be able, it's communal living, and so not everyone just automatically gets in.
Okay.
That's what we're and I was going to say something else, but I've already forgotten what that is.
And we have a lot of cases like that,
Oh,
where they
yeah,
were
yeah.
able to get back on their feet by staying in our shelter, and then they get a job, they get housing. A lot of times we don't even see them again because they just go on their lives,
Yeah.
And
Take
people
a new
don't
path.
realize that, hey, that person now is a contributing member of the community. And you would never guess that at one point they were a victim of domestic violence. So there's definitely a lot of hope. Now we get some people that are still in that cycle where they're leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back. And that can be hard. But what I tell my staff is that each time they come in, we're planting seeds. And you don't ever want to give up on them, because maybe the next time is the time they're really going to finally break free.
Same with personal situations with friends and family members.
Exactly,
Right?
that's what I'm saying. It's like, don't give up, even though you want to, because the next time might be the time. And you want to get them before something really terrible happens.
And it is about patience. Nobody really, you can't walk in that person's shoes, and patterns are very difficult things to break, even when they're unhealthy patterns.
Yes.
So I want to thank you guys for all the wonderful work that you guys are doing in the community. It's amazing the support that you're giving to people who are in crisis. I think that, we touched on volunteers, and they do need special training, but I think that you guys do take donations for the shelter, right?
Yes.
Let's talk about how people can help support what you do.
There's lots of different ways.
Okay.
We are going to be participating in Giving Tuesday.
Okay.
So we will be one of the organizations. That's a cash donation, but the really important thing about donating, or what's nice about donating in Giving Tuesday, is that the McConnell Foundation will match that, and there's some incentive. So if you give money that day, it's an online giving, I think it's
November 28th.
Yes. It kind of boosts your donation. So you can, your money will go further because there's some incentive prices for whatever happens there. We can always accept cash donations, that's great. We can also...
Just by the way, that's northstategives.org, and it happens on November 28th. which is 2 days after Thanksgiving to keep people in the giving spirit. But this year, as of November 14th, you can give donations early online. So again, check out northstategives.org.
Thank you. And then we have a list of like what we call wish lists. So things like
There you
sanitary products.
On your website?
No.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's on our
Always.
website. We'll have to get it up.
We
on our
need to,
website.
yeah, we need to get some.
You know, even like travel size shampoos and conditioners, soaps, deodorants, toothpaste, toothbrushes, tampons, clothes,
Even
household
kids' clothes,
items.
right?
Kids' clothes are popular because, you know, that tends to go faster. We have a limited amount of clothing space, so check with us for adult clothes.
But kids' clothes, you definitely need a lot
Yeah,
of
that
them.
tends to go fast.
Because when people are leaving, they're just leaving most
Yes,
of the time, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Pajamas, underwear, bras,
Okay.
paper towels.
So toiletries, day-to-day things,
Yes.
right? Gently used clothing for children
and adults.
and adults, but check. They can always call the office
Yes.
and see what's on the wish list that they might want to help fulfill. And so let's give them the phone number to the office.
Okay, our phone number is 530-842-6629, and our 24-hour toll-free hotline is 1-877-842-4068.
So if you're in crisis, you can call that 800 number.
Yes.
But is that designed just for the people in crisis? Like, I can't call because my friend is in crisis on that, can I? Is it?
You can call.
I can't?
Yeah, I mean, we'll give you some options.
Okay.
We can't
Does
call-
that happen very often?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can't call back your friend directly.
Okay.
Like, you can't tell us, you know, I'm really worried about Jane Doe. Here's her phone number, can you call her? We can't do that.
Okay.
But we can give you some ideas of what to tell your friend and maybe how to encourage her to come in.
Okay. So the hotline's not only for those who are victims, but also those who want to help victims. That you can get some valuable information to help people who are in this situation.
And I want to add too that we're the Rape Crisis Center.
Okay.
So oftentimes when people have kind of a question on where to go or what to do on sexual assault matters, they can also call our toll-free hotline.
Okay. Okay. And so that's the open house again. We want to remind everybody about the open house.
Yes, it's October 25th from 11 to 2.
And the address here?
It's 118 Ranch Lane.
Okay. So you can come and learn all about the great services, meet the people who are making these wonderful things happen here in our community, supporting those in need as far as domestic violence in their homes and with their families. And again, it's so important, like you said, you know, I think I'm here today because, as I said, you know, I think it gets overshadowed so much by Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but just even as an issue in general, it seems to be a little overshadowed and under-recognized. So I certainly would love to help to do whatever we can here to bring this stuff out to the community, and really want to thank you guys for doing what you do. Jim, any final things you want to share about your staff here?
Well, I have a great staff, and they all could go make a lot more money doing other things, but they've chosen to help other human beings, which to me is heartwarming. I mean, Carlos is a Cal Berkeley grad, Spanish speaker. We have a couple, 3 with master's degrees. They can all go, because we have very few benefits, and like next to no benefits. So everyone here could go get another job and make more money and benefits than they do here. It's just because they're carrying people that they're here. And I greatly appreciate that. And if it looks to anyone that might be watching this, like we're shaking, that's because it's 50 degrees, and I want you to know that if you come to the open house, the temperature will be higher.
We couldn't figure out how to turn the air conditioning off. All right, well, as you know, when you watch a show, every show, we have a word of the day and a saying of the day. So today's word of the day is inviolable. And it's very appropriate. I'm looking on your faces thinking that neither of you know what that word means.
I'm not sure what that means.
It means secure from violence, destruction, infringement, or desecration.
Oh, inviolable.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome.
I'm
Inviolable.
glad it wasn't a spelling bee.
All right, how about the positive saying of the day? Okay. One of the most courageous decisions you'll ever make is to finally let go of what is hurting your heart and soul. And that was by Bridget Nicole.
That's very appropriate.
Very appropriate.
Very appropriate. Because you know what? Once you make the call, once you make that decision, it's the first step towards the rest of your life.
Mhm.
And you deserve a violence-free life.
Oh, yes. Wow, that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, and so the last thing that we do that everybody knows is we love to make sure that everybody in the community who has had a celebration of another year being on the planet, we sing them happy birthday every year. That's how we take out the show. We get
Spanish or English?
lovely.
You're trying to get me to sing it by myself.
I think you can sing along in Spanish if you'd like. Can you do that?
I don't know.
You look great, Jim. Everybody look good, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna do 1, 2, 3. We'll sing happy birthday to everybody. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Anybody that's had a birthday? Happy birthday to you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next show.